This lesson is about the exterior siding of the house. The one thing you're going to learn is that the siding isn't that important. It doesn't matter whether it's aluminum, vinyl, or logs. The most important thing are where the penetrations are, the doors and the windows, and how they're trimmed around it. We are trying to prevent water penetration into the home. So let's get started.
Now that we performed the roof inspection, which encompasses the gutters and the chimney also, the next step is we're going to perform the exterior walls. That is particularly going to be looking at the envelope, the cladding, what we call for siding, the penetrations being the windows and doors, lights, and outlets on the outside. And then last, we're going to be looking at the electrical system. So, looking at our check sheet, first thing that we're going to understand is the type of cladding. Here we have vinyl siding. Of course we know that there's many types of cladding that we call. Here we got siding, you can have aluminum, you can have exterior log, but you want to understand the type of defects for each of those materials. Specifically, the point of this right here is so water doesn't get inside the home. The point of the sealant around the window, here's our penetration. We want to understand that this is a vinyl window, that we have aluminum wrapping, meaning that there's wood underneath here. So we want to look at the caulking around here. The whole point of us walking around one time looking at the walls and the windows is to see how water can enter the home. So when you're going through your check sheet, you're going to identify the wall structure. Here, this is going to be a stick-built home. And then we're going to be looking at the wall covering. Now again, you can have vinyl up here in the backyard. You can end up having wood in the front, and you want to understand each of those defects associated with that material. And now we're going to describe the overall condition. As we walked around that single time, we didn't see any defects specifically for the siding. It wasn't damaged, it wasn't loose, it wasn't missing, and things of that nature. And now we're going to get into the trim section, talking about penetrations. Penetrations, like I said before, windows, doors, lights, electrical outlets. So, when it comes to a window, we just want to make sure that the caulking around the aluminum wrapping is sufficient. Here, it's kind of breaking apart. So we're going to point out that this is more or less a periodic maintenance. That's what caulking typically is. As we come over and take a look at the sliding glass door, again, we're going to be looking at the J channel to see how the siding comes up against the door. We're going to look at the overall condition of the door. Is there any rust? Is there any bending of the material? This door doesn't have a screen, but sometimes we would check the functionality of the screen. Here, we're going to check the functionality of the door, and we want to understand that sound. But at the same time, you want to move the door back and forth, all right? Because by moving the door back and forth, if it is rough or very difficult to open, maybe the door frame is sagging in what way. But then why is it sagging? The installer didn't install a door that's sagging. Maybe it's because of water infiltration. Specifically, we want to look into these corners. We want to see if there's any staining along the wood. Is there any possibility of water infiltration? That is our devil in the details of how water's continually looking and trying to creep into this home. Now, over here we actually have a light. Now, we're not going to get into the construction or the architecture of how that light is installed. We're going to look at this to see particularly how they installed it. A lot of people may have a wood block. A lot of people may have the appropriate connections coming out of vinyl siding. We're not going to judge on how they installed it. We're going to judge, can water infiltrate, get behind the sheathing, and then impact the wood. So as we're looking through here, this has all been caulked around here. It's kind of solid, so I'm not seeing any particular defects. But again, you're going to look at these items all around the house. Now here we're going to have, some homes have central air, and then some people have actually installed temporary, what I call temporary AC units. And this is normally usually done by a homeowner. And it may be difficult to see here, but you can look up here the channel, the J channel that's sitting up here, is actually lifted up. So the possibility of water entering the sheathing or behind the sheathing is a possibility. Now we know that the AC is supposed to be pointed down, so we're going to take out our level. And actually that is pointing toward the house. So the likelihood of, now I know we have an eave right here, but if we do get a lot of rain, the possibility of water getting behind here is high. So we would point that out as a defect. And then again, we'll look at, see if there's caulking around here and along the side to see continually how does water enter the home. Now last, outlets. Our standard is that these outlets should all be ground fault circuit interrupters. So here we have our tester. One, we're going to open it up and then we're going to close it. One defect would be if, oh look at that. One defect would be sometimes you may not have a cover. We're always going to want a cover on here. Maybe it'll be missing. You know how that doesn't close? That could be also a defect. But specifically, we're going to put our tester in here, put our hand around there. So this is definitely a grounded outlet, which is good. We're going to test it. It popped, and then we're going to reset it. And that's what we're going to do all around the house for each of these outlets. So when it comes to the exterior walls, specifically, we want to look at how does water continually enter the home, the entire envelope, through all the different penetrations. So going back to our check sheet, the next thing that we're going to look at is the electrical system. How does power come to the house? Now we're going to look at the electrical system. Now there's two types of, I wouldn't say systems, but two types of entries. One can be underground, the second is going to be overhead. This house actually has an underground entrance for the electrical system. One of the things you have to know is there's always going to be flowers or vegetation around the home. We don't inspect far away. That is not our job. We need to actually get into that location as long as it's safe to understand the overall condition of the electrical system. Now referring back to our chart, or excuse me, the worksheet, there is no overhead, so there is no wires threatened. It's going to be difficult to understand the service size because of the conduit, because it's coming inside the ground. So a lot of these items are going to be not applicable, but we'll discuss that further when we show you about an overhead system. All right, so let's get in here. So this meter is attached to the house with a wood board, and then the siding is around it. So one thing that we want to understand is the condition of this wood panel. Here it's fair. It definitely needs to get painted because the possibility of water infiltration in the wood going down the wood. Now there's 3 screws that are holding on this meter with the possibility of maybe water can foul those screws. The next thing that we want to do is understand, is it secure from the home? Is it not loose? We see that we have a ground rod, which is fantastic. So we have a ground rod. The next item we want to look at is that this has been properly locked by the electrical company. All right, if this is not locked, the possibility of someone stealing power is high. So we want to understand that if it's not locked, we want to let the client know. Next, we want to look at the meter. Now, typically for residential homes, we got single phase 120, 240. And what we're going to be looking for is CL200. That means that this meter is rated or calibrated to 200 amps. All right. So the maximum power, the maximum amperage that can be pulled into this home is 200. We haven't gone inside, so I don't know if they have a 60 amp, 100, 150, or 200. But we want to make sure that it's calibrated for the highest amperage that can be pulled. Next, we want to look at the overall condition. Being that we're in the Northeast, we get a lot of snow. I don't care for how low it's to the ground, because if we get a good snowstorm, there could be a possibility of water infiltration in here. So it might be a periodic maintenance of the homeowner to come over here and kind of shovel the snow away and things of that nature. So specifically, how's it attached to the house? Is it loose? Could water penetrate this electrical system? We want to note the ground, and then we can see the conduit. Sometimes these meters are up high, so there may be what is called the slip joint, because up in the Northeast we have frost, so the ground can move up and down. So you may see a slip joint, which is just more or less a pipe that inserts into a collar, and then you have another pipe that comes up to the meter itself. So once you take a look at this, you're going to fill out your worksheet, and that is how you perform the outside electrical for an underground system.
In this module, you will be taught an exterior walls overview, standards of practice, types of wall coverings, performing an exterior wall inspection, typical concerns, exterior doors, windows, and high-efficiency piping. Exterior walls. As a home inspector, you will have to visually inspect the exterior walls of the house. This includes wall cladding, flashing, trim around the doors and windows, stoops, steps, areaways, porches, and applicable railings. Additionally, as a home inspector, you will inspect the electrical service connection to the house. Home inspectors shall observe and report on all exterior walls and coverings, flashing and trim, all exterior doors, including garage doors and operators, all attached or adjacent decks, balconies, stoops, steps, porches, and railings, all eaves, soffits, and fascias where accessible from the ground. All adjacent walkways, patios, and driveways on the subject property, and the condition of a representative number of windows. Home inspectors are not required to observe and report on the following: screening, shutters, awnings and other seasonal accessories, fences, geological and/or soil conditions, or recreational facilities. All adjacent walkways, patios, and driveways on the subject property, and the condition of a representative number of windows. Home inspectors are not required to observe and report on the following: screening, shutters, awnings and other seasonal accessories, fences, geological and/or soil conditions, and recreational facilities. Outbuildings other than garages and carports. Tennis courts, jetted tubs, hot tubs, swimming pools, saunas, and similar structures that would require specialized knowledge or test equipment. Erosion control and earth stabilization measures. The operation of security locks, devices, or systems. The presence of safety-type glass, or the integrity of thermal window seals or damaged glass. Exterior finishes on a house are nothing more than a blanket covering to protect the inside. However, the exterior finishes are to restrict the penetration of rain, snow, and wind, allow moisture to drain out from behind the exterior finish, and be constructed in a manner that provides durability and a long life expectancy. The most common types of wall coverings are aluminum, vinyl, wood, and brick. Other types include stone, stucco, asbestos cement, cement, and insul brick. This section will discuss how to perform an inspection of the exterior cladding, windows, doors, electrical service, and high-efficiency piping. Similar to Lesson 8, roofs, as a new home inspector, you will need to create a standard of practice for inspecting the exterior walls. One example would be where you begin inspecting the house so you do not overlook an area. Right corner of the garage, front door, and garage door, and then walking around the house completely looking at the siding, windows, doors, and envelope penetrations. No matter where you start, as a home inspector, you must remember SOC. You are always considering the safety, operation, and condition of the component you are inspecting. When inspecting specific styles of exterior walls, there are a few defects or concerns that you should be looking for. Some common defects you will observe are missing, loose, or damaged siding or trim. Rot or damage around window and door frames. Remember, the purpose of the wall covering is to keep the elements out. Any possible moisture intrusion point is a defect that should be noted. Here are some common defects based on wall covering material. Exterior doors are designed to provide privacy, protection from the weather, and architectural appeal. Typical sizes for an exterior door are 36 inches wide and 1 3/4 inches thick. Back doors may be from 30 to 32 inches and still 1 3/4 inches thick. Areas that should be considered when inspecting doors are not only the obvious things like wood rot and deterioration, but the lock, latches, door handles, threshold, and weather stripping. These areas are subject to abuse. The weight of the door works on hinges. Hinge screws will loosen over time, allowing the door to sag. Overall, all of these are important to the door's functionality and longevity. Typical exterior door concerns include trim deterioration and peeling paint. The purpose for trim around windows is to prohibit water from infiltrating at the junction of the wall and window or door. Window inspections are not performed on the outside of the house. The windows are inspected during the interior inspection. Therefore, as an inspector, when looking at the outside of the window, you are not considering the operation of the window, but only the outside physical condition of the windows. Remember to consider the following: drip cap, caulking around windows, base of trim at the sill, caulking at the window sash, drip edge on sill, side wall flashing, mitered edges, lower wall flashing, and paint on the trim, all areas prone to leakage. Typical exterior window concerns: peeling paint, gaps between flashing, broken, cracked, or missing panes, wood rot, deteriorated and or missing caulking. The two-pipe direct vent system is most common in home heating applications today. One pipe provides suction for combustible air directly to the sealed combustion chamber, and the second pipe directly vents exhaust gases to the outside. The piping shall exit the exterior wall at a minimum of 1.5 feet from the ground so that it is above the snow covering. Additionally, the exhaust pipe shall be a minimum distance of 3 feet from any window. Inlet pipe should be directed toward the ground. Discharge pipe should be perpendicular to the wall cladding. Should be more than 4 feet from a soffit. Should be more than 3 feet from a gas meter. Should be more than 1.5 feet from the ground, and should be more than 7 feet from a walkway. Should not discharge below confined porches and decks, and shouldn't discharge at inside corners by 2 outside walls. Should be a minimum of 3 feet from combustion air inlet for other appliances. Here is a copy of your worksheet for inspecting the exterior walls.
This chapter we were talking about exterior walls. In my mind, the most important thing that a home inspector needs to do when he's doing that section of the inspection is looking at the wall covering, finding out what that siding is, identifying it, and looking at the condition. But the most important thing you need to do is make sure that the door and window trim and those penetrations of the envelope, that there's not a problem in terms of water infiltration. You get a couple of windows installed improperly, you get stairs that were mounted against the door improperly, and that's where all your problems start. The siding is the siding on the side of a house, but the penetrations can cause a lot of problems. Sometimes if there's a problem at the way the window is installed, you may see it on the outside, but certainly when you get inside, you're going to see some water underneath those windows. So I always pay attention to, and I feel is most important, is where those window and door penetrations. Thank you.